dropping the beat here in NA HGC as we prepare to get our next series going. With Heroes Hearth getting their win over Endemic, they claim a spot at the Western Clash, and they're feeling pretty good about that 3-1. And now we look toward a match that not necessarily going to have as much bearing on the Western Clash, but does have a lot of emphasis on looking forward to things like playoffs in the Crucible.
Yeah, getting the positioning towards playoffs, obviously not wanting to be in the Crucible. And we see LFM, who's yet to pick up a win, but every team that we talk to says that this is a team that is better than what we see in their record, and we've seen that within their games that they've been strong. Same for Simplicity. You could almost argue the same thing. They're 1-3. When they look good, they look good. And then there's other games where it just seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect. Volskaya and Dragonshire have been major problems for them, so we'll see how that plays out. So this is a matchup, obviously, of two of our lower teams, but the implications in the long run are definitely there.
Well, our resident new Barak is back, as I was just attacked by a bug. So we'll keep you updated on where that's sitting throughout this series, as well as where they're sitting in the standings. That was one of my worst segues, I will say. They're down toward the bottom. Simplicity, LFM, and No Tomorrow all kind of gravitating around the bottom, and it's the bottom two teams at the end of the phase, so not the part, but the phase, who end up having to fight for their spot in HGC in the Crucible.
Yeah, and then obviously the top 6 teams, well, depending on how things go at the Western Clash, the #1 team gets the qualifier, but beyond that, to be in the playoffs, you have to be one of the top 6. So that's why there is the emphasis on the longer term, because getting into that 6th seed is definitely a lot better than that 7th or 8th, and potentially losing your spot. Obviously, getting in the 6th seed obviously guarantees you for next year too, which is a double bonus. So for these teams, it's more about the long term. You know, Fury had sent out a tweet, I think it was prior to last week, said that, hey, we're looking to get the win. We still think we're a top 4 team. Right now, the record doesn't show that, but their play has definitely improved since phase 1. Their record, we're still looking for that to take an uptick.
Well, both of these support players are who we have as they weigh in about this series.
Well, our last showing against Simplicity was extremely close. I'm pretty sure it went down to a 3-2. So we're really looking forward to changing that around this time. Simplicity does play some interesting heroes. So with the 3 bans, it'll be exciting to see what comes out from both sides. But I'm really hoping we flip it around and pull out the win this time.
Like, our team wants to, still prove that we're really a strong team. So we're gonna try to make the Western Clash if we still can. When my team shows up, like, we see how good we can be as a 5. I think LFM too. Like, once they show up, they actually play pretty well, and they look like a pretty good team too. So I think for our match, it's who shows up that day.
Tiger JK has been upgraded to Robo Tiger JK. But it is exactly as he said, whoever shows up here. And for LFM, they have been showing up versus a lot of top-tier teams in North America. They have won early games versus Tempo Storm, versus Heroes Hearth. And for me, it comes down to, what is it about the end of the game? What is it that stops them from being able to close out these games? And we kind of saw versus some teams, like I remember Infernal Shrines last week, when they all of a sudden could have taken a fight and then didn't, and then another place could have taken it and then ended up taking it in a place that did not favor them on the map, in the terrain. And so I'm starting to wonder if maybe there's some nerves that come into play when they know they're just so close to being able to finish out a game.
Simplicity kind of gives me that same feeling. And
yes.
I've never before analyzed a game this way, but maps like Dragonshire and Volskaya, vehicle-style maps, they have struggled with. And I've never taken the time out to be like, oh, this team really struggles on maps where you have to control an objective. Yet they have struggled on Volskaya and Dragonshire multiple times. They've had leads on all of these. And I don't know if it's just a matter of going out and exploring, watching other teams and seeing how they close it out. I don't know whether there's miscommunication going on there, but they've had leads. And then they give it up, and even when it's like we saw on Dragonshire, it's like, all right, well, we got the DK. Just getting a keep is good enough. And sometimes we've seen Simplicity come up a little bit short. So their late game mistakes, I think, have come back to bite them equally as much. And sometimes it's hard as a team that's not as used to winning to know the win conditions, to realize those win conditions.
Yeah.
And I think in this series, both of those teams will be figuring figuring some of that out.
Yeah, I think for that reason, it makes me wonder how important is the early game in this match between the two teams, because if that's a problem, then it may be that we get to the late game and things get a little wild in this series. We're starting off on Volskaya Foundry, so when we talk about those vehicle-style maps, it's Simplicity's choice, and it's a place where we know they're going to want to play some Sergeant Hammer.
But now with all the bans in the front part of this draft, I really wonder if Sergeant Hammer, before using a ban on Sergeant Hammer was something we've seen teams implement after they lost a game or two to Sergeant Hammer and struggled against it. We have seen Chromie in response, so if you have a game plan prepared for that, and if you are preparing for Simplicity, you are preparing for Hammer drafts. Unless, with the triple ban, you now can say, well, maybe we'll just take care of that with one of the first 2 picks.
It's entirely possible. It may be enough. It does feel like Simplicity is most potent on that Sergeant Hammer, and everything else, not quite as terrifying. I did want to say that LFM has changed up their Battleground pick, or their Battleground ban. Both of them generally ban. Brax's Holdout is very constant for Simplicity. Tomb has been the favored ban for LFM, but to change it up, neither of those impact the other. Braxis has not been picked by LFM yet. Simplicity has not picked Tomb yet. So for LFM to take away one of those, the scarier of the 2 Sergeant Hammer maps, which are Volskaya and Towers of Doom, is showing that they have done their homework, definitely.
Well, that's one way to make sure not to deal with Sergeant Hammer. Yrel obviously has a ton of self-sustain, a lot of control over the control points here, so taking Yrel off, which Zuna's had a high priority for Yrel since she entered the Nexus, and I think that without first pick, you risk giving that up on a Battleground that she does excel on. So I think if they're first pick, maybe things would look a little bit different in that ban category, but LFM, we got Sergeant Hammer, and we've got Raynor.
Just monopoly on the Terrans here. Genji will be the next ban, the final ban in this phase. And now we look toward the first pick of LFM. As far as overlapping heroes, K1 Pro plays both Droplets and Figgy's most played heroes between Phoenix and Jaina. They're going to go ahead and get Blaze, seeing that Yrel ban. These are the 2 most played, I believe, solos for Zuna, so a little bit of Zona focus here.
Yeah, we've seen some flexibility over towards Thrall for Simplicity, but it's sometimes been a third melee for them. But it's also something that Zuna would flex over to before he moved to the primary offlaner in this. So see if that comes into play. Malfurion picked up. What's the sustain here? Is it going to be the Phoenix?
Yes.
It is.
Takes Phoenix away, as Droplets has played a lot of Phoenix, but his Hanzo is still up if he wants to get that, because it will give a lot of the sustain damage DPS that you want over the Shrine with the Scatter Arrow build, or the control point.
For LFM, again, the high priority on their mages. We're going to see Hanzo picked up first. It's a matter of Jaina, Li Ming beyond this. Do we get that for either team? As you said, there is the overlap, especially Phoenix. We've seen, anybody can really play Phoenix with the backliners, the flexibility there, allowing for the other to play a different damage dealer, whether it's or be the flexible hero to go into that melee. So if Simplicity does want to pick up one of those heroes, they might ban one of them right now. They do?
They do. They ban Jaina. I thought it was either that or maybe a support, but just in prioritizing getting Malfurion so high, it feels like somewhat of a target toward the Aware. The Aware has played 7 Malfurion games. His next highest is 2 games on Rhaegar. Seeing that Malfurion now, LFM wants to go and take away a possible Hosty Tracer. One thing that I don't know if we're going to get this game, but I think something to keep in mind is sometimes when Simplicity plays versus teams that are newer, obviously Fury not a new player by any means, sometimes they will dig deep in their back of old tricks, right? And pull out some of these old heroes that generally people don't maybe know how to play against necessarily. Not this time though.
Chromie over Li Ming. Not terribly surprising, but if you had asked me who it would have been, I would have said a Li Ming. Johanna's still going to be available if we want to catch that on the tail end of the draft. They get the Dahaka, but I think that they're really kind of waiting to see if Johanna is necessary. We have seen a Garrosh priority for King Caffeine.
Yeah.
But we still need
He could also Diablo.
Alex Straza.
And I thought that would be Li Ming. Alex Falstad.
I mean, Chromie has a giant bullseye with Alex Straza heals.
Yes, but I think this is going to be what we saw from Endemic. But yeah, you're still wanting to get the full efficacy of her heals. You want to be able to get some out of abundance too. And there he is, Garrosh.
So definitely seeing if he needed to pick maybe something safer with Johanna. Garrosh does do well controlling a point. Murd, and on the other side does have that dwarf toss in case he does get tossed in. Blaze can always jet propulsion himself directly back into that Garrosh. But Chromie holds a point. Dahaka and Garrosh obviously on the front line has a lot of control between the toss, the drag. Phoenix though. I'm just trying to think, if we get the toss in, do they have the level of coordination to get the toss into Roots, into a Chromie follow-up, or is Chromie kind of setting up her own skill shots? That's always kind of a weird conundrum of, you know you're going against an Alex Straza, you know you have targeted heals, you know you can drop bombs, but if you can get that single target isolation, the toss back into the Roots, then Phoenix and Chromie can hit onto those, but a Blaze and a Murd are very hard to take down with just those two. That's why Li Ming would have maybe in the instant blow-up category been a little bit more my favor, but Chromie, always strong.
What do you think of Falstad over Li Ming for Figgy here?
I mean, if we see another Q build, we go into the Gathering Storm, I would be in favor of it. These drafts are different than the meta that we traditionally see. I'd say that Simplicity is a little bit more on the meta side, but the Garrosh, they have the priority on the Garrosh more than any other team.
Yeah, and he may have a tough time on the Shrine. We will introduce Simplicity first. Hosty will be playing Chromie. K1 Pro, that puts him on Phoenix. King Caffeine will be playing his Garrosh. Trying to hold points, trying to stay strong in the front. Tiger JK, support player, playing Malfurion, and Dahaka will be played by Zuna.
Well, you guys are going to love this lineup here on the right side for LFM. If you didn't know, you're about to know.
Good job, Figgy.
Be aware, he will be on the Alex Straza. Fury on the front line there on the Murden. Equinox.
That's right.
He's going to be on the Blaze. We'll talk about that here in a second. His Droplets is going to be on the Hanzo. And Figgy doing all the squawking there on the Falstad.
Previous coach for Simplicity at the beginning of this phase now has been trying his hand at some open division play, and he'll be filling in for Swabs. Though Equinox has a lot of prior history with Fury. They have been on teams together in the Murloc days for a long time. I still feel like he has some tough shoes to fill because Swabs on this team, this phase, has been playing fantastically.
He's been with them in that core part of the LFM roster for a while, which is why that synergy generally comes in. But Equinox, a couple of weeks ago, was no longer the coach of Simplicity, and as you said, playing the open division. So whether there's any bad blood or not, I don't know, but if you say, hey, we got a sub spot, would you like to take this? Oh, by the way, we're playing Simplicity.
The old team that you were coaching just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, BT Dubs. This is going to be a fun one. We'll see how that plays out, whether we get the sprays, but both teams prioritizing their turrets early. Falstad did go into the Gathering Storm, which, if the fights are very prolonged, you have a lot of stacking potential. The problem with this build is the time between control points. And if there's any bit of lead, the time that it takes to get back to that, and then if that fight lasts a short time, then those stacks are minimal at best. So we'll see a lot of it determined by the length of these fights and the amount of sustain coming out from both sides.
You know, one thing that I think is really cool, as we're gonna see King Caffeine be the target of some harassment from LFN. They almost get the kill. Oh, but instead, the turnaround kill to take out Falstad, first blood for Simplicity.
King Caffeine walked back in there, wanted to get that heal, managed to get that heal, and they turn that with a big Chromie bomb. Those are plays that they look risky, but it's a Garrosh, and you step back in. That armor took a huge uptick.
Yeah, though there's a lot of poke between Falstad and Hanzo to try to bring down a Garrosh health bar, it's still going to be, I think, pretty hard for them to try to get that full kill. But as I was saying before, with LFM having Equinox, Swaps and Fury do such a good job of going back and forth on the front line to provide kill options and follow up CC. It's very crucial to LFM and how they like to play. They want to be aggressive and they want to combo those two together with maybe a Stormbolt and then a drag so that they can keep someone locked down, and then the rest of the team is there quickly for the follow-up damage. So when you talk about this old synergy of Fury and Equinox coming back into play, hopefully Equinox will be able to follow up the same, though. So much control over Fury, gets a little bit of healing from Alexstrasza, but he's going to have to back off for the moment so he can start healing back up.
Second win kicks in, and now Simplicity is actually claimed control here over our first control point as level 6. Nowhere near level 7, but Chromie going that Dragon's Eye will be getting that bonus damage as she hits targets. We also see a little bit of slowing action here by Phoenix for a little bit more control, changing up to level 4 talent, Gilly.
Risky though, getting inhibiting energy. Basic attacks with Phase Bomb against enemy is slowed by Plasma Cutter, so it only counts for the Plasma Cutter slow, but does give this area slow for a lot of people. And potentially that's going to set up nicely for King Caffeine to get in and get a combo, or Zuna to get a drag. But you're giving up what is normally a talent at the tier that gives you movement speed yourself. So K1 Pro playing more for the aggression than keeping himself alive.
Right now, stacking, of course, between the Falstad and the Chromie is going to be all eyes on that as we get Fury tossed in again, puts down the Thunder. He's going to survive, but Blaze will not survive. That's going to be first blood here. Fury continue to try and hold on. The K1 Pro and team dishing out the damage. Turret cleaned up by Simplicity, still holding on to one of their own.
It's pretty cool to see Calf bait this damage, this aggression from LFM, and then K1 Pro flanks from the side. He doesn't need a Jaina to get the flanks going on that Phoenix. We'll head up to clear the assault camp in the top now that the first protector's been picked up by Simplicity.
Zuna tries to land the drag. Figgy's going to go ahead and barrel roll away. For Falstad, sitting on 11 stacks. For Falstad, finding the time to stack on the control point when the fights go that quickly. It wasn't even contested beyond overtime or 2 overtime. And so we're looking at almost a full level lead, still 20 plus seconds on this. No priority yet on clearing this up. And with this minion wave here, Fury's coming in with the flank. Nice dodge of the Stormbolt there by K1 Pro. But if they lose this fort here, this is how snowballs happen now on this. Still got quite a bit of damage to go, but not a lot of time left to do it.
Yeah, it's Chromie and Malfurion inside of this. Garrosh is just now coming up. Dahaka still on the bottom. Biggie's going to fly in. They are looking to try to get a kill on someone after this. Into the fray as King Caffeine tanks that jet propulsion. Zuna came in too. Simplicity comes to the aid of Hosty and Tiger JK as they pop out of that vehicle.
It's actually really well played for Fury to jump in front of him to make sure and try and get the body blocks, force that interesting rotation. But whenever vehicles do expire, you do have that small little knockback radius, so very well played by Simplicity to buy themselves enough time. Did not get that top fort, but they do have themselves a slight experience advantage for the moment.
Healthy lead, and likely they could maybe use the assault camps to get the kill there, or of course, should take it out with potentially the next protector, as they've already been able to take out the well in that lane, which is very nice. We start looking toward the next control point. I was wondering, Chromie held her heroic ability for a little while. Hosty would have had up until 10 before Bunker came in. Alexstrasza doesn't have a cleanse, so there was the possibility that we saw Temporal Loop. Just hold on, wait until the Bunker is forced if it's used early, but in this case, still sticking with the slowing sands, and with that, we have Twilight Dream and a Planet Cracker. Simplicity is looking to spice up our lives with some wombos.
Get that taunt locked down. We'll see how effective that will be as LFM picks up some heroics of their own. They do have the disengage potential with Mighty Gust. Also Bunker, should you not be taunted and can find your way into that. But a little bit of Lifebinder action making its way in again. Seems to be that change is having enough of an impact for Alexstrasza to be a little bit more meta outside of Infernal Shrines.
Yeah, this is super cool to see, though I didn't look at any drafts from Korea this morning. I don't think we saw it in Europe. Zuna may not be seeing the light of day for a little while.
Well,
nice ISO, though, on Fury. Stop some of the stun lock. Oh, Dragon Zero just connects. That was enough to get the kill, and the Dino body goes flying.
He played that really well, and I think he almost got away with it. But the Dragon Arrow to confirm that kill, that was a lot of heroics used. But that is opening it up. They're going to trade forts here. There is a camp still top.
Yeah, Simplicity's trying to prep that wave in the mid so they can do some more damage there too, since they did get the towers earlier. Had K1 Pro doing that on his Phoenix.
I'm surprised they didn't. They keep wall at this point of the game is worth a substantial amount of experience. I'm surprised they didn't just push that in to threaten keep wall, because there was no way they were going to contest that bottom fort. And mid fort, you could tell they had their sights set on it, but still they did get the fort wall down. Camp will need to be cleared up here. 10 seconds away. King Caffeine still holding on to that healing pulse. Tiger JK with a turret of his own. So coming in fully armed to the second control point here at the top between Simplicity and LFM.
Good on LFM to get some trade push going so they can take out a fort. Try to catch back up in experience, but later on, as long as they're in a position so they can contest that third control point, that'll be a situation where they'll give Simplicity a taste of their own medicine, considering the fact that LFM does not have a well, they don't have this fort to retreat to. They still have things like the bunker, like the Mighty Gust, should things start to turn a bit sour.
See Simplicity trying to pick up 13. They had Dahaka near the bottom. He's actually also going to pick up a turret camp, as K1 Pro will finish that race towards 13 there in the mid lane. So now fully armed is Simplicity, picking up the turret camp, reclaiming control of that top, taking it away from LFM as they're trying to pick up 13. They should have enough time to get 13, come up there with a turret of their own. That's going to make 2. But they will be fighting into a Garrosh composition, which if that setup is there with the Planet Cracker, it's hard to just move directly into. So we'll see how LFM approaches this. 13 picked up. They're going to have to make it happen.
57% and still climbing. There's a little bit of time for LFM to figure out how to get on this point. That slowing sands is a bit brutal, and it will be too if they're trying to retreat back through that.
One turret down. There's going to be the toss. Avatar's been used. It's going to start the fight for now. Chromie trying to drop bombs elsewhere as King Caffeine and Zuno hold point right now. Both turrets have now been used by LFM. Healing Pulse in return here for Simplicity.
There's a Dragon's Arrow that hits the front line. Planet Cracker 2 with the isolation. Zuna stunlocked to death. He's dead. A Twilight Dream after the taunt. That's more than enough for LFM as well as the Dragon Queen to reclaim the point. Figgy fell low. He's got to go back. He can come right back in. 99% before Simplicity conceded. Once they have Dahaka back, he can come back into the action. Simplicity likely to be able to get another chance at this.
Yeah, they'll have a chance here, but right now it could come at a fight on this support camp. Surprising engagement, 70% in climbing. Blaze, Equinox still holding that point for now. Oil comes down, tries to get the slow. Dahaka's made his way back in, zoning there by Equinox. Still has to go through Oil. Zuna finally makes his way back onto the point.
Overtime, 99% to 99. Whoever claims this will surely be able to get a lot of structural damage done and set themselves up beautifully for the next one. Stunlock after Zuna for a second time on this control point. This time Zuna stays pretty healthy.
Healing is down, as is the bunker. King Caffeine eating so much of that damage. Does use the taunt, but they get out just in time, and now they turn their attention onto that Garrosh. Get the takedown. Overtime is all for naught. There's going to be the Mighty Gust. It's separated Tiger JK. They're unable to get the proper follow-up, but Fury making plays there. Protector picked up, though, here for LFM.
Lovely synergy. The Dragon's Arrow in the back. Getting the first kill on Garrosh, and then trying to get more as they had the Gust away. It was excellent job by LFM, who momentarily have to stop things, stop the siege from the time trap. Hosty trying to use this Protector to stack up. We're sitting at 40 stacks on Sandblast.
This is definitely a much bigger target to do that against, and definitely climbing. Fort has fallen, dropping him quite a bit of damage on. Droplets took about 50% of his health. Aware there on Alex Straw instead of healing back up. And now the attention here towards the middle for LFM. No rotation to the bottom, Gilly, because they took care of that quite early. So getting that structure damage and that experience here between the top and mid. So nicely played here by LFM as they're going to go ahead and retreat. Should have enough health in this to walk away. things working out in their favor.
Yeah, that was the last 4, and should this game go extremely long, the 4th control point will be back in the mid, which is just LFM trying to do what they can to ensure that there's no frontline defense for Simplicity in any lane. Simplicity now need to work their way towards 16, and we will have what is likely to be the general stalemate, though with that time trap, he made it into Avatar.
Oh, baby, that is a 4-man
Wow.
stun with that Dragon Arrow. Not enough damage yet to follow up. I kind of wondered if Figgy might come in for a big flank gust. Flew into the backside. That does allow them to get the control point. Hosty, got to be careful as Equinox goes in. Scatter Arrow not going to have enough geometry on that one.
Burned Avatar, burned a couple of abilities, but the LFM kept Simplicity from getting some of that comeback experience there. It was huge. Simplicity just had to back on out. They do have their assault cam and are working on upping their arsenal for this next control point, but this is the slowdown that we so often see on Volskaya Foundry as teams are loath to give any kills before that very important 3rd control point.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point on that middle one, if and when we do make it to that 4th one, because the bottom control that LFM did establish earlier, they have that bottom fort still there. They still have the well in their favor. So a lot of things for LFM on the up and up ever since that first fight have definitely turned around. Falstad sitting at 27 stacks. Again, hasn't had the most chances to up that level 1, but definitely getting there. Murden sitting on 22 on his quest. Did finish his baseline, so did get the Pierce.
Well, now Zuna is the focus of LFM for ganks. He has Tunneling Claws, as long as he can make it out of the stun lock. What has been happening a lot of these fights is that he gets hit with a Storm Bolt and then the Jet Propulsion too, and then the stun lock from that just ends up being too much, or he takes too much damage in the process and then trying to back off. But now having Tunneling Claws, as long as he can get into that burrow, can reposition himself and hopefully be able to survive what otherwise may have been a Zuna kill.
A little bit of attention put on to King Caffeine there as he was caught out. Enough vision control for LFM as the Sonic Arrow goes out. And Fury, again, always scouting. King Caffeine still sitting on 9 stacks, trying to complete that. But one thing that did happen is Chromie completed her baseline, sitting on 63 stacks. So Hosty will have that clone to bring a bit more damage to these team fights. So for Simplicity, starting to work into the late game, things can get a little bit stronger here for them.
Well, that plus the shifting sands, giving the increased spell power. There's a couple of different spell power options at 16, but not going Quantum Overdrive here for the big burst of time, then having the cooldown. Instead, relying on his ability to hit those skill shots, land those, and then should he be able to build that up in a way, then the Dragon's Eye is likely to chunk with that increased spell power. So we'll see if Hosty can drop the bombs in a way to start getting some picks for Simplicity, who have, though started off really well in this game, started to fall behind to LFM.
You know, this is a chance for LFM. You know, they're on the race towards 20. Their macro has been really good. If you actually look at the mini-map, they've got the lanes pushed out. I feel it's not necessarily should have happened, but they could have pushed into that top lane, taken keep wall, given up control of this bottom control point, race towards 20, and then make their way back down. They are using Falstad there in the mid lane. I think that's a very good play for them. But now they're going to have an even talent tier fight. If they can get a kill or two, obviously we'll accelerate that towards 20. But LFM, they're coming in. They have their turret. Falstad's made his way back down. It's time for a fight. See who can win this one.
Well, there's the battle, and the stun lock hits on Zuna. A gust separates him away, but a lot of it too was to separate King Caffeine, who just takes a bunch of damage and can't go anywhere between that Dragon's Arrow and the Jet Propulsion. Now Tiger JK, he's used just about everything with that Twilight Dream coming out. And the second kill for LFM surely means that they can gain control of this and can start pushing down this bottom.
Yeah, this will give them a lot of control, potential win condition, because if they can push in here, excuse me, I feel now they can move in. They can move into the bot lane. This is a mistake we saw from Simplicity, not a mistake yet. But once you have this advantage, you just push in that bottom lane. Prep it up. Since there are 2 members down on the side of Simplicity, you prep that bot lane for the Protector. You already have 20. You get through that keep wall and you only have keep to go through. And we've seen the probability of those wins just extremely high probability. Right now, they've spent their time. The turret camp is okay. Getting the healing camp it's not necessary. Getting that top camp, it's not necessary. I feel they should be using this protector to be ending the game and using those 2 kills to prep to end the game. And when you and I approach this series, it's a matter of finding win conditions, knowing how to win.
Yes.
And not too often, I think, as a team that's still trying to find their way in HGC, do you have those conditions available to you enough? And right now, this wall should already be down.
I just want to point out that both Blaze and Falstad are inside this protector. Those are the 2 safety buttons for LFM should things go awry. Dragon's Air, oh my. He had agility right on out of that one.
Well, here we go. Protector onto the Keep. The Keep sitting at about 70% health and falling. Fury goes in, misses the Storm Bolt, but the Keep is fallen. The Protector's still relatively healthy at about 50%. See if they can find their way to end it as they're bringing the pain, they're bringing the damage. They have the 20 tier. They have a lot at their disposal. Still should be able to close this game out as there's 20% left on the Protector's shields have now fallen here on the side of Simplicity.
And Dragon Queen, excellent route. Taunt follow-up too as the Protector falls. Figgy narrowly making it out, uses the wind tunnel to keep Equinox alive too, and LFM's gonna start healing back up. They take down Malfurion, and that is everything for them as LFM hopes to get a win in game 1 over Simplicity.
The ease at which they got through the Keep could have potentially been the core. They still will find themselves a victory here in game number 1, so LFM able to close it out. And I will say, droplets for me, the scatter arrows he hit, the one on that bottom fight over the control point, the scatter arrow that he initiated that on, onto Garrosh, and then that one there that just obliterated Malfurion. The one on the bottom control point definitely won that in their favor. That one there was just to have a little bit more damage pumped out, I think helped seal the deal. LFM picking up game number 1.
An important win for LFM. Of course, we talked about the implications of this match as both of these teams want to be able to stay out of the Crucible range, also be able to fight for a possible spot at BlizzCon at the HGC World Championships. And to do that, you have to be in 6th through 2nd place, potentially 3rd, depending if we can have an NA victory at the Western Clash. But this also feels probably very good for LFM, who have had a lot of trouble with closing games out, Jay-How.
Well, it's a positive sign for them. I think if you look around the league and you look at top teams, the minute they get those 2 kills, they just push in bot lane. That Protector is so strong with 20 tier advantage that you just push down. You take Keep Wall. Once you get through that, it's Keep and Core. You don't need turrets, you don't need the healing camp, you don't need a camp pushing top, you don't need any of that. We've seen teams, the success rate is extremely high by taking that approach. Obviously, they still won the game. It's just the probability drops a little bit, but they still had 20 tier. They had all the items in their favor. So a lot was in their favor to close that game out. But again, it's just finding new ways to win. Finding a way to win is the hard part. Finding new ways to win, after you've established that, you start to see things a little bit differently. So I think it's a very good win here on game number 1.
Well, 2 veterans in the North American Heroes of the Storm scene who have been playing and competing pretty much since Alpha and against each other are King Caffeine and Fury, the 2 warrior players. They have been warrior players for forever too. So are there any stats that immediately jump out to you, Jay-How, as you're looking at these?
Yeah, obviously I think people are going to be like, oh, Fury, 2.1 deaths per game. But I will say this, I've gone back, I've watched replays, I've seen the way this is played out. For LFM, there have been games they've struggled, don't get me wrong, but Fury is in the position that he knows. He's experienced before, and he knows the positions to win. It's not always perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect, but he's in positions where he needs to be at times, sometimes over-aggressive. It's a matter of getting the rest of the team on the same page, and the Aware in particular, to get everybody on the same page. That stands out to me, and it looks bad, but I can guarantee you that that's more on getting team synergy down than it is a matter of him going in and possibly being overextended. It does happen, but still, I think these 2 stalwarts here, only 1.1 deaths for King Caffeine. That's actually a pretty strong number for most tanks as well.
I think when you remember the play from Fury, where he was going to die, and he knew he would die if he did this, but he went in and got a 2-man mosh pit, and they got the kills on both of the heroes there. He leads the aggression for LFM. He brings the experience to this team, and that comes in the form of sometimes dying, but setting up for the kills for the team, and that is a huge reason why LFM has been able to show the improvement that they have been in this phase.
I'm still waiting. Ever since K1 Pro has moved back to the ranged role, Hosty did a really good job there being the primary carry, and it just feels like Chromie, it doesn't have the sustain. It has the burst, but in this style of play, in this sustained style, I don't think it fits the play style of Simplicity. It's the Sergeant Hammer, it's won him some games. The Chromie, it's been there, it's been strong. But I want to see just explosive potential from that back line, because in terms of kills per game, they're in the bottom tier, and that's not something we saw from Hosty last phase. K1 Pro is still looking to reestablish himself, because we knew before he switched that role was one of the best ranged assassins. He's still reestablishing himself. I think they still got some working out to do. And, you know, it was fine that game. I just need more from the back line there.
Well, and we're going to Dragonshire, so